Hi, I'm Rachel. Welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. In today's garden tour, you will see everything is looking brand spanking new because I recently amended the garden for spring and I haven't changed out any of the plants yet, but there are finally some little baby harvestables in there, and I'm pretty excited to show you guys. So the video where I talk about what I did to amend my garden and show you guys the long 2-day process of getting it done, that is coming out after this one on Friday, but I will show you just briefly what I've done. In the walkways, I have wood chips, and then in the areas where there are plants, I have straw. And underneath it all is compost. I got mushroom compost from the same people that I've been getting compost from since I moved here. And the basic idea is that I wanted a sturdy mulch in the walkways, but I didn't want the wood chips over the whole garden this year because I've learned that wood chips, well, I kind of knew this, but I didn't really think about the implications of it, that wood chips take a lot of nitrogen to break down, and they're actually stealing that from right near the plants when you put wood chip mulch by the plants. And I'm not entirely sure how much of a difference that makes, but because straw is pretty cheap, I figured I would go ahead and try that out this year. Oh, and before you go jump on buying straw mulch for your garden, go watch my video, which will pop up now, showing you how to make sure that your straw is not full of herbicides that would kill your garden. Draco knows he's cute. Don't you, buddy? Okay, so on to the actual tour. If we take a look at my fava beans, I have some exciting news, and that is that we have baby fava beans coming up. Look at that. There's another one right up here. Baby fava beans. Here is potentially a better view for you. You can actually see the full life cycle from the bud of the flower to the flower kind of opening up, and then you see the flower has been pollinated and dries up and falls off to reveal these cute little beans. These fava beans were planted back in October, I think, and it took them this long to make beans for me. I think if I had planted them sooner, I might have gotten a fall crop. But I did pull them through the winter, and they are now trying to produce. And I'm thinking that maybe my placement of the fava beans was a little short-sighted, because as you've seen all winter, the fava beans are on the trellis that I intend to use for tomatoes. And the fava beans are just now putting on pods, and we are maybe a week and a half away from our last frost date, which means 2 to 3 weeks before tomatoes go out, which is way too soon if I want to maximize on the harvest from these fava beans. So I might have to figure something out. What I could do is I could potentially plant my tomatoes maybe intermittently, so like between these two, but also out away a little bit, so that as these get tall really fast, they will be on the inside of the trellis and the tomato will be on the outside, so it will still be getting sun. And it will be a little longer until it gets tall enough to be able to tie to the trellis, but tomatoes will get really, really tall, and that will only be a short period of time from here to there for the tomato. And by the time it's tall enough to be on the trellis, I can probably pull these fava beans out anyway. So follow along to see how that experiment goes, I guess. It is always improvisation in the garden, because y'all know that I'm a bit of a planner, but there's always things that I miss or just don't plan properly in the first place. Check out the little mint coming back after that really sudden frost just knocked it almost entirely back. Like I said, it is coming back, and I think in a couple of months you guys won't even be able to tell that it was completely killed off. So if we scoot on over, you can now see the onions so much better against the color difference of the straw. And it's even more obvious how much bigger the garlic is than them, but it's also obvious that they're not small themselves. Although I do think it's funny that I've got like a bunch of onions this size, and then literally right next to them is an onion that's only this big. And it just goes to show like some of the variation that you can have in different plants. If this was the one onion that I had planted, I might think I was doing something seriously wrong. But because I have many, I can see that it's just a little oddball. This over here is the one cabbage that I have left that I am almost certain will not head up. It's a Tete Noir. But all these leaves are beautiful and perfectly edible. They're going to be a little bitter because it's probably not going to get too cold anymore. But they are perfectly edible, and I can probably find something to do with them or mix them in with some different greens so the bitterness isn't quite as noticeable. I also want to take you guys down the row a bit to where my lettuces are. These are the ones that I started indoors not too long ago, put out in the garden. And again, this is one that was not covered for that really drastic freeze, and this one was. I've been pulling from both of these for salads, mostly this one. You can barely tell. But there's still such a big difference between this one and this one. Covered, not covered. And this one, it did recover, like I said, and it looks fine. But it's just so stunted. And it makes such a big difference, these cold temperatures that some plants are exposed to. So I just want to extend this concept out to your peppers this year. I know when the last frost date comes around, you're going to be really excited and you're going to want to put out everything that you can right away. But I recommend that you wait with your peppers until the nighttime temperatures are above about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I have found and I have heard that a lot of other people find that peppers, when they're exposed to lower temperatures, not necessarily killing temperatures, but stuff below 50 at night, they just stunt, kind of the same way that that lettuce stunted. And just like with these lettuces, while your pepper might survive and look okay and maybe produce a little bit, if you don't expose it to too cold of temperatures, you will likely get a much better crop. We got quite a bit of rain yesterday. This is why garden tour is coming out late this Wednesday, because usually I film on Tuesdays, but it was just pouring all day. Alright, so let's move on to the trellis row. My one kale is looking fantastic. I've been pulling from it a little bit for salads as well, and it's just continuing to grow into this beautiful, beautiful plant. And if you notice next to it, what is this? It's a pea, and the peas are growing. These little plants that I thought had been killed, knocked off by that sudden frost, have come back and are, for the first time all season, looking like healthy, normal, gonna grow from you pea plants. And yeah, that's super exciting. I just hope that they produce before I have to pull them out to put beans on this trellis. Farther down I have my little radishes. Some of these are recovered from the frost, like this one you can see. This is a recovered one, and this is a newly planted one. And this one is much older than this one, but again, this one was basically almost killed all the way and had to recover from that big freeze. And this one got planted just a little bit after that, so it has had an easy life. But some of these I'll pull, but most of them I'm hoping to sit here and let go to seed and provide a little bit of pest protection, because I'm planting winter squash on this trellis, little ones, so that they can kind of hang down like cute little baubles. If you weren't following me last year, I completely lost all of my squash to vine borers, and it was very sad. So I am trying some new things to see if I can dissuade the vine borers, and also going to be trying to watch out for the vine borers. And I don't know what's going to happen with that, because last year was my first time dealing with that pest. So in order to get rid of them without spraying tons of nasty chemicals all over everything, I'm going to have to try out probably just a few different things to see what works. Check out that cute little bee on this turnip flower. This is exactly why, well, one of the reasons why I am letting these turnips flower. They are an early flower in the garden, shows the bees, yeah, this is some place where you're going to want to stay, because there's going to be food here very soon. I also want to take you down to look at these beets. Oh, hello. This is Kata. She's the rambunctious one. So I want to take you down into these beets. They looked, I thought they had entirely died when that big freeze came through, but they came back and they still have not really bulbed up. I can feel that there's a thick root down there, maybe the size of a small carrot, but definitely not like bulbing up the way a beet should. And I guess eventually I'll pull them out or wait for them to go to seed, one or the other. I also think it's very interesting to note that while all of my white lady turnips went to seed, this one and this one have not gone to seed because they are a different variety. These are golden turnips, and that is some good information to have, that these golden turnips do not go to seed as easily as the white lady, even though the white lady makes a much prettier root than the golden ones. It is good to know what is better for a spring planting. I put this long sleeve shirt on thinking, oh, it's like 65 degrees out here. It'll be like maybe a little chilly. And because it rained yesterday, and this is South Carolina, it is downright muggy out here. Whew. All right, so let's take a look at this last row over here. Garlic here is much smaller, but it is a different variety. And my Brussels sprouts are like fully for sure going to seed now. You can see all these brassicas have a very similar little look to them when they go to flower. They start looking like little broccolis. And I've said this before, but if you didn't know, broccoli and cauliflower, like that is the flower part that you are eating. And so all of this still technically super edible. Not super tasty, but super edible. And this will open up into flowers similar to how the turnips have. Probably also will be a yellow flower. I'm planning on saving seeds from these Brussels sprouts, and because I'm saving seeds, I want to note which ones are going to seed first and which ones are going to seed last. If we look down here, we can see this one. It's still a good big healthy plant, but it's a little behind in terms of going to seed. And if you want to select for that, for something that will take a little longer to bolt, then you would wait and save seeds from the one plant that seems to have a little bit more resistance to bolting. So there's also something brand new planted in the garden that you can't really see right now, and that is mushrooms. I have put some mushroom spawn underneath some of the wood chips and some of the straw, and there will be another video coming talking about how exactly I did that. Ooh, little bug coming at me. So there will be a video coming about how exactly I did that, and then of course later this summer there will be a follow-up video on the fruiting of those mushrooms. And also these straw bales behind me have mushrooms in them. You would think a big layer of wood chips would deter the weeds, but really not as effective as you might hope. That's why I put down cardboard when I can underneath new layers of mulch. I just didn't have enough to do everything I wanted to. Oh well, I'm gonna pull some more weeds. We can take a quick look at the raised bed. All the herbs are looking great. Actually, the cilantro is starting to bolt already. You can kind of see how it's getting this thicker stem here and kind of growing a little more straight up than some of these other ones that are kind of growing out from the side and from the base here. So regular leaves come from the base, and then when it gets this stalk in the middle where it starts splitting halfway up the stalk, that is a very early sign of bolting in cilantro. But I have planted a cilantro alternative that is supposed to be good for hot weather. It's a tropical plant, and so maybe we'll see that in the garden this year. Oh, I also wanted to show you this dead stevia plant that's been here all winter. Right here at the base from the roots. It is just now starting to come back. Speaking of coming back from the roots, blueberry plants, I've got to show you this one. It's teeny tiny, but it's making these cute little flowers. Oh, look at that. Obviously, I'm not expecting to really get any amount of fruit off of these this year. This is just kind of their their first year to grow up and, you know, put on some good foliage. But I think it's super cute that that one is already trying to make little blueberries. So some more, oh, hi Kata. So some more of my raspberry plants are coming back. You can see little bits poking up here. This one over here is starting to put out cute little growth. So I have some hope that my other ones that look a little dead may yet still come back. So I'm going to give them a little more time. And you could put a bare root berry bush out any time of year that it is nice and warm for them. So if I put one out in like a month or so, if these ones actually don't come back, then that will also be fine. I don't have to do it right now as spring is springing forth. I also want to take you inside real quick to look at all my baby seedlings. It may look a little excessive, but I promise I have a place for all of these plants. My peppers I have up potted, and they're a little bigger than I had anticipated for having been planted the same time as the tomatoes, but I think they'll be okay until I can put them out. I also have some eggplant. Some of them are not looking great, and then these just recently got up potted and separated from these, and whereas you can see some of them look a little scrawny, other ones are just going for it. This is such a huge plant already, and I had planned for these to be bigger when I put them out, but I kind of hoped they would all be growing at the same rate, and I'm not entirely sure why some of them decided to be puny and some of them decided to be huge, because they've all been in the exact same conditions. And speaking of puny, my tomatoes not looking as healthy as I would have hoped. I thought that they were just a little shocked from the transplant, but some of them, you can see some of them have recovered, but most of them have not. So I went ahead and planted some backup seeds, and my tomatoes may be late this year, which, given the fava bean situation I just discussed, might not be the worst thing in the world. But I do hope that I have some tomatoes. This happened to me last year as well. My first batch of tomatoes just like all randomly looked terrible for some reason. And I thought that that was because I let them dry out in the greenhouse. But these haven't even been in a greenhouse. So I'm just not really sure. So I still have more seeds to plant. And among those are basil. I need to plant basil, and I just planted a bunch of flowers, so like marigolds, zinnias, cosmos, those sorts of things, because I don't want them to be that big before I put them out in the garden. And so it's like maybe 2 to 3 weeks before I would put those out. Those are in little plug trays, and I'm going to do a similar thing with my basil. I'm going to put them in little plug trays and then transfer little seedlings out into the garden. Alrighty, I'm going to leave you guys here for today, but I have several videos that I am either filming, editing, or just about to film. There's so much content coming out this spring. I'm really excited to share all of this stuff with you. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of it. And until next time, I wish you all happy gardening.